What's up everybody, Maran here for another My Week With video. So this week I've been driving the 2023 Lexus RX 500H. So if you want to hear all my thoughts on the specs of the 500H and my overview of all the Lexus RXs in general, I was on the media launch for all versions of the RX. I got a chance to drive them back to back and compare them. It's a really great video if you're trying to decide which version of the RX is right for you. But in this video I want to talk more about the 500H now that I got to spend a week with it and kind of get a better feel for it and more time here with it. And I'm going to go over all the pros and the cons here of the 500H. But before I do, I want to give it first a huge thank you to this week's sponsor, Carmigo. Carmigo is a car marketplace that allows you to sell your car quickly and easily, getting you multiple offers in just one business day from Carmigo's nationwide network of dealerships. All you have to do is take a few pictures, set a minimum price, and watch those offers come in. It takes less than 15 minutes to list your car, and it's always free to list. You only have to sell if an offer meets or beats your minimum price. Plus, they handle all the annoying paperwork, loan payoffs, and other details that make selling your car a headache. When I first heard about Carmigo, I immediately thought it was a great idea. You get exactly the price you want for your car without any of the hassle or the haggling. So avoid the long process of going to multiple dealerships to get your car appraised, or the annoying back and forth of Facebook Marketplace messages with random strangers, and instead get your car sold in a day with Carmigo. If your car sells, you normally just pay a flat $350 sell fee, but for Matt Moran Motoring viewers, if you use the link in the description, you'll only pay $300 instead. So if you're ready to sell your car, click the link now and get started. So first off, getting into the good things here I noticed about the RX 500H in my week with it. The first thing is the performance. I think driving them back to back on the press launch kind of did show how this has more power than the others, but I think getting to spend more time in more situations with the extra power here really has given me a new appreciation for the extra power in the RX 500. It really is punchy, and I love that you get that immediate electric zip before the strong gas engine kicks in. And it just, I just felt that it's a very eager setup too, the way they did the throttle response and the tuning for that. Even in the normal mode, it really wants to spring into action and get you moving pretty quickly. Also, we're coming up some corners here. One other thing that I noticed about these is just how sporty they set up the handling. They really gave it agile handling. And again, like the steering feels a little quicker than some of the competitors, for example. And just, it feels, a little lighter on its feet than some of the others. Even some of the sportier stuff like the MDX Type S, for example, which feels a little larger and heavier and a little less athletic as a result. This just feels a little leaner than that. Now, this obviously isn't 3 rows like that is, and so it's not a direct comparison, but sizing-wise, it's, fairly close. And I just noticed with this that, it just handles really, really well here. And of course, the 500H, you also get these Michelin Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires, which are summer tires, by the way. So I'm driving this here in December. There's a few days where I had to be a little cautious, with the weather. And so just keep that in mind if you are, ordering or planning on buying a 500H and you get, all 4 seasons of weather. Just be prepared that, you're going to have to swap tires on this thing. These are not all-season tires, even though they're called the Pilot Sport 4. It does not mean they're 4 seasons. So definitely be aware of that. And also, even though they're the SUV version, I thought the SUV version would be all season, but it's not. Since they're summer tires, they have lots and lots of grip and nice and quiet as well. And so combined with, just the sportier suspension setup you have here with the 500H and all that, it just means that you have, a really dynamic handler. And as far as all the other basic driving stuff goes, the RX is a very nice companion, nice and comfortable. The 500 doesn't go overboard with the suspension tuning. It's still nice and comfortable, a great daily driver, certainly not too sporty in any way. Just feels like it's a really nice kind of happy medium, sporty, but also very comfortable still, in a great, family, transport vehicle, things like that. And so I think they did a really good job of finding a Goldilocks there as far as the setup goes. And also, the more that I use this 2.4 liter turbo 4-cylinder, the more that I really appreciate its power delivery. It really is nice and punchy in the lower RPMs there, and just feels strong all the way through as the revs climb as well. And so that 366 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque, I think feels very accurate. It's probably not quite as crazy punchy as like the MDX Type S, again, which has a turbocharged V6, but I think that electric motor really helps you off the line, and then that gas engine kicks in to still give you pretty strong performance. And it just it was really nice. I don't think you should buy this for the specs. I don't know if it feels wildly faster than an RX 350, for example. It certainly has has a good bit more power than those, but it's not, you know, a mind-blowing difference in my opinion, but it just, you know, just is a nice enhancement in the performance here. And that's why it's not called the RXF or anything. It's not super extreme, but it is a nice, you know, improvement there over the 350. One last little thing I did also really appreciate here is actually out on the highway in the RX. It's a really nice highway cruiser. I think the lane tracing assist, the way that it's now a little more proactive with its steering, it's a little bit more assertive with its assistance, is really a nice touch. And so compared to past Toyota and Lexus lane keeping assist systems, which didn't really do a whole lot, this now actually does a lot more. So that yes, it still is a hands-on system, but it does a good bit of that steering for you if you kind of just let your hands hover on the wheel and, you know, let it do most of the work. It does do a good bit of that steering for you. And it also does have the traffic jam assist and, you know, all those types of things to help you in the very low speed stuff, which is great. But one other thing here, so getting into some of the cons of the RX and things I didn't love in my week with it. First off is also talking about the safety tech here, the forward cross traffic alert that this vehicle has. It's really not set up well. I'm not sure. I mean, it's certainly a nice feature in theory to be like, oh, well, if I'm not paying attention, I happen to see someone crossing in front of me. But, you know, rear cross traffic alert is a lot more useful. But as far as the front one goes, I mean, you should be seeing everything in front of you. And so I don't know why you need an alert. And so the way they set this up, in addition to the fact that it might just be a little overboard in general, it doesn't intelligently turn off for instances, for example, when you're turning onto a main road where there's lots of traffic. You know, I'm sitting at a red light and I'm stopped at a red light and it's just giving me constant alerts the entire time I'm at the red light of like, oh, there's a car passing in front of you, there's a car passing in front of you. It's like, thank you, I would have had no idea. It's just like, it's a lot. And so that combined with one other thing I didn't love tech-wise is that this whole system is very based on the head-up display. Lexus tried to do this futuristic approach. They did this also in the NX, and they're doing it in basically everything it seems going forward, where the gauge cluster doesn't really do a whole lot. It shows you information, but it doesn't really have a lot of adjustability to it, aside from the drive mode showing you a different view. But basically, like, all these steering wheel buttons are all, like, they don't show you what they're actually doing on the actual button itself. You have to look up at the head-up display to see what is the up arrow going to do, and you can assign them to do different things, and that's all great, except that I'll get to one other thing I don't like about the head-up display in a minute, but whenever you have that safety alert going off constantly, I can't change any of the other stuff. So for example, if I want to, you know, turn off the cruise control, or I want to, you know, go to a different track, I can't even do that while that alert is going off. So if you are sitting at an intersection and cars are passing in front of you, forget about changing anything with your steering wheel buttons. Obviously, you can still go into the screen, especially while you're stopped, and change things, but it's just, you know, they're wanting to use the head-up display, but then they, you know, hijack the entire head-up display to give you a useless warning that is just overboard. It does it over and over again. So that was one thing I did not love. And I also, this head-up display, it's cool, and I get that, you know, they help to keep people's eyes on the road, and especially, you know, now even with the steering wheel buttons being on the head-up display, you know, it means that you're really not looking down very often, and that's great, aside from the fact that there's a lot of information sometimes displayed on there, especially if you're navigating. It is really nice, for example, though, like Apple CarPlay, those map directions will go into the head-up display. You don't have to use the Lexus built-in system. But for example, if it's giving you, you know, instructions, and it'll give you those instructions on the head-up display 2 miles before you need to make that turn, for those 2 miles, you have a bunch of text of like, there's this road name going down to this road name, and you need to turn here, and you got all that stuff cluttering your view for the next 2 miles, plus showing you your safety stuff, plus showing you your speed. It's just a lot, and so, you know, obviously you can turn off the head-up display, you can have it lower, higher, or whatever you want to do to have it be comfortable, but in my line of sight, having it set up the way it should be set up, it's just a lot of stuff, and I found myself, you know, if you're really trying to watch stuff on the road, you're trying to dodge, you know, roadkill or something like that, it kind of does block your view a little bit. So it's safer in one way, but in another way, I feel like it sometimes blocks too much of my view, and you know, I don't know how far we should go with head-up displays. I mean, you know, I know that bigger is better generally, you know, as far as any product goes, but, you know, with this, I almost feel like I'd prefer a smaller head-up display just so it's not cluttering up as much of my vision. I don't need as much stuff on there, you know, as this shows, and so, you know, you can custom tailor what's displayed on there and stuff, but it's just, it just seemed a little too much in my opinion. Again, that's a subjective thing. You might love it. And then really the only other thing that I can complain about is the hybrid system. So it still isn't totally seamless, and most hybrid systems aren't. Most of them you can still feel, when the gas engine kicks on and, when it's doing everything. But I just found that not only, was it not seamless, but it also, I could feel, whenever it was shifting around. So sometimes that would mean that it would give me a little bit of an abrupt jolt in, response. So if I'm, accelerating from a stop and, for example, I'm getting on the gas slowly and then all of a sudden I ramp up a little bit more power, it gives you a little bit of a jerk. It's not totally smoothed over. It's a minor nitpick thing, but you're just, as you drive this, you will be very aware that you are driving a hybrid that is kicking the gas engine on and off at will, and not a big deal, but just, I definitely didn't forget all week that I was driving a hybrid because of the way it was transitioning. A little rough sometimes. And then the last little disappointment I do want to mention here is the fuel economy of the RX 500. So on paper, it looks pretty good. These are rated at 27 in the city and 28 on the highway. And so, that's a very clear advantage over the 350, for example. And considering these really only start about $5,000 more expensive than a 350 F Sport handling with the all-wheel drive, which is the sportier 350, kind of, competes with this, F performance version of this. So for only $5,000 more to, have that huge bump from 21 in the city on the regular RX 350 up to 27 in the city here with this, you would think that would be a very, strong advantage for this. And if you're doing lots of stop and go driving, that could be huge and, well worth the upcharge on its own, honestly. If you don't want to go for the regular RX 350, if you want the sportier thing and you want the extra power, you get that for $5,000 more and you get the great fuel economy. And I'll get more into the pricing in a minute. But as far as the fuel economy goes, unfortunately, in my driving here, which was a pretty good mix of city and highway, which shouldn't even matter because, they're almost identical. It's 27 and 28. But anyway, I've been getting 22.2 mpg. And before I did more of the highway driving, it was actually around 21 it was hovering at, which, it was, if the RX 350 is rated at 21 mpg in the city, and I typically get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating. So I was expecting to maybe do like 25 worst case scenario. And hybrids typically, in all of the stop and go stuff that I'm doing around here in suburban back roads kind of driving, it's hilly, I'm coasting down a lot of these hills and stuff. I was expecting to, do a lot better than 22 mpg. I'm not sure why. I'm not beating on it. I was most of the time just, cruising around, running errands, things like that in this. And still to be getting 22, just a little underwhelmed with that. It also, by the way, does require premium fuel with this engine. So another thing to keep in mind here is, you're going to be paying a little bit more. And so, with the RX 350, that you might actually end up saving a good bit of money because that will run regular unleaded. And I found that the RX 350H, the hybrid version of that, was actually still pretty punchy. Obviously, it's not quite as fast as this by a long shot. This has a lot more power, but if you do want good fuel economy, I would probably just say to stick to that version instead of this one, because I'm not seeing as great a fuel economy as they're rated at, unfortunately. And also, if you are worried about fuel economy, just keep in mind there is also the RX 450, which is the plug-in hybrid version, which will hands down be the most efficient one by far and have a really strong amount of electric range and give you a really economical drive while still giving you more power as well, with those having around 300 horsepower. Also pretty solid performance. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, just wish I was getting better fuel economy here in the 500H. But the last thing to mention here, though, is the pricing and how it compares to its competitors. So these start around $62,500, and then this one, I don't have a Maran for it, but as tested, if I go into the configurator, I believe this one is going to be around just over $65,000. I think it's like $65,275. And so at that price point, it's kind of an interesting place where it's at, because it does compete pretty directly with like the GV80 with its punchier 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 that thing has. And although that has a little bit more horsepower than this does, has 375 horsepower versus 366 here, but this has more torque at 406 versus 375 pound-feet of torque in that. Now that again is a twin turbo V6. There's none of the hybrid stuff, so it's a little more predictable and maybe a little punchier in certain instances and a little less punchy in others, depending on what driving scenario you're in. But I'd say that's probably the strongest competitor to this, because a lot of the other competitors are 3 rows, because the other competitor brands don't have a mid-sized 2-row to really compete directly with. So I think the GV80 is one of the strongest competitors and also one of the best in its segment as well. And so compared to that, I haven't driven the 3.5T version, I have driven the 2.5T version of the GV80, but I've driven the GV80, spent a week with it, and what I can say is that it certainly isn't going to be as sharp with its handling compared to this. It feels bigger, heavier, it's more focused on luxury than this is, but I think the materials are also more impressive in that it feels a little more expensive inside than this does for the same money. So if you want the most luxurious thing possible and you just want a punchy motor, definitely check out a GV80. I think it's, you know, a great choice. But those, again, are going to get much worse fuel economy than this. Even though this is only at 22 mpg is still much better than, you know, everything else that has this much power in this segment. So as far as, you know, that goes, yes, it might not be as good as they're claiming, but it's also much better than all the others. And another competitor, for example, the Acura MDX Type S, that's another one. I mean, that thing, I think I was getting like 16 mpg in that. So yes, it's a turbo V6 and you don't have the hybrid thing. So, you know, it feels stronger in some instances, but again, you're going to be having way less fuel economy in that versus this. So again, 22 looks pretty good whenever you're talking about the competitors and what they end up getting. And as far as the class of vehicle goes, the only other real strong competitor that's close to this pricing wise is the Lincoln Nautilus, which I haven't experienced either, so I can't really weigh in on, you know, what that's like, but that's just one of the other ones that's, you know, worth considering for sure. And then you know, as far as like there's a BMW X5, Mercedes GLE, all those mainstream German competitors, those are all going to be much more expensive, comparably equipped. And you know, also though, I have to add that since this is a mid-size SUV but it's still only 2 rows, you know, some of the compact luxury SUV competitors have gotten so large that they're pretty close as far as cargo space and stuff goes, like an Acura RDX. Actually, you know, that's you can get one of those with a sportier, they don't have a, you know, high performing version, but you can get like the sportier A-Spec version and get one of those very nicely equipped, you know, like fully loaded for 52, 53, something like that. So, you know, there are some other bargains if you are trying to kind of undercut this and you're, you know, okay going down, you know, just a little bit size wise. But again, I think the cool, you know, combination that really Lexus is the only one that offers of this much power while still getting over 20 mpg and having that hybrid efficiency and the performance is a really cool combo. And you know, I'm just glad that they're kind of doing something different here. And so I think if you are someone, again, wants that power, does a lot of city driving, is going to use the hybrid component a lot, I gotta say that, you know, this is going to definitely be the most economical choice and also just be a really enjoyable choice, you know, as far as just giving you kind of the best of both worlds in a lot of ways. But anyway, that's about all of my thoughts here on the 2023 Lexus RX 500h. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Lexus for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.